The Valkyrie Profile series has been dormant very, very long time, but it's looking to revive itself with its newest entry, Valkyrie Elysium. But does this game live up to this series' legacy? Hi, I'm Ryan Tufford from Carpool Gaming, and this is Valkyrie Elysium in review. Whoa! So someone who just discovered the Valkyrie Profile games earlier this year and played through them for the first time, I was actually very, very hyped for Valkyrie Elysium because I really enjoyed the original Valkyrie Profile games, and I was very excited that we were getting a new entry in the series. Sure, it's a very different entry in the series, mind you, but I was very excited nonetheless. It was one of the games I was looking forward to the most coming out this year, and, you know, I feel one of two ways about this game, and we'll kind of dive into it as we go into this review. Of course, I played it on PlayStation 5, but it is also available on PlayStation 4 because it is a PlayStation exclusive, and the game was developed by Trace, which was the original developers of the Valkyrie Profile series. But it was also co-developed with Soleil Games, who are the makers of the Samurai Jack Battle Through Time games. They also did Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker, which is a game that I've talked about on podcasts before that I do not like very much, but the Samurai Jack game was actually pretty cool, and you can definitely see like their influence from that game and some of the things that were in that game in this game, which is pretty cool. But let's talk about it. So first off, the story in this game actually is a direct sequel to the original Valkyrie Profile, but at the same time, if you are new to the series or you haven't played any of the games before, it explains everything you need to know, and there really aren't like a ton of callbacks anyways. So you'll be totally fine without playing the original games going into this. But in Valkyrie Elysium, you play as Valkyrie, a newly created Valkyrie by Odin, who's tasked with purifying the souls of the dead who were lost during the beginning of Ragnarok. Because the world itself is, again, based off, Norse mythology, and it's very much in the throes of Ragnarok at the moment, but Ragnarok hasn't fully taken place yet. So the world hasn't been completely destroyed yet, but, you're pretty much running around a post-apocalyptic wasteland in this game. Along the way, you're going to meet powerful fallen souls called the Erenjar, who will aid you in battle and will allow you to purify additional souls. So then Odin gets powered up because Odin is going to be the one who's going to, purify the world and kind of save it from the throes of Ragnarok. So that's your journey throughout the whole game. But I'm just going to come out and say it right now. The story in this game is not good. In fact, I was expecting the story to be pretty good, or at least, decent. Because even if they go in the direction where they want to focus more on the action, I would still expect this, being a Square Enix game and a game in a long-running series that's always been known for really good stories to give you a really good story. But this one, unfortunately, it's so cliche and it's kind of boring. And I just honestly, halfway through the story, I just honestly didn't care anymore about the story itself. It was a big kind of detractor. It had, some twists in it, but I mean, the twists were super easy to figure out and see ahead of time. So unfortunately, I'm going to report that the story itself, not that great. Definitely not this game's strong suit. And I'm happy that, a lot of the story moments go by pretty quick. And there were some parts of the story I thought were pretty good. I liked, first of all, there's multiple endings in the game, and I like the way that the endings are structured story-wise. And I kind of like the way that each of the endings kind of leaves the story. So I do like the story in parts, but for the most part, I just found it to be just kind of generic and boring and, not that great of a story. But, and even, again, even if you were playing it from a longtime fan of this series, you're going to be disappointed from it. If you're coming in from a new perspective, you might not have those expectations of expecting, this story to blow you away or anything like that. Cause maybe, you haven't played the other Valkyrie Profile games, but I can assure you when you go back and play the other Valkyrie Profile games and then look back on Valkyrie Elysium, you're like, oh yeah, I guess the story in that one wasn't so great. But yeah, it's a little bit of a disappointment. But the campaign actually flies by pretty quickly because it's actually not a very long game. I finished the story and all the game's side quests because there's a whole ton of side quests you can get in the game by, interacting with lost souls that you'll find in the environment. But it took me about 17 hours to finish everything on normal difficulty. So every mission in the game, as well as kind of the main story itself. Also, there's also a little carrot on the end of the stick with each level in this game, because there's 9 kind of main story levels and then all the side quests as well. Each of them gives you a rating at the end of the level, kind of like something like Devil May Cry does. So as you play through the level, the game will kind of grade your progress depending on how much damage you take, or how long it takes you to go through the level, or how many enemies you kill, and then it gives you a rating at the end of each level. But so it kept me wanting to go back to other levels to get that, coveted S ranking. But I will say that there wasn't enough kind of carrot on the end of the stick to make me want to really do that beyond just getting the trophy for, getting all the S rankings, because you don't really get any rewards or anything like that. Because even though this game kind of falls into the RPG category, there's no experience points in this game or anything like that. You're not leveling up Valkyrie at all. You are kind of giving power to the Aranjar, because every time you summon them in the course of battle, depending on how many times you summon them each battle, they'll then gain extra, attack power and magical power, but they're not gaining levels or anything like that. And likewise, Valkyrie, you have some upgradable skills through the power of, gems, which is kind of like this in-game currency that you'll earn as you, loot treasure chests or you kill enemies. And that allows you to get extra abilities or get extra passives. But you don't really earn like levels or anything like that. So it's not really a traditional RPG. In fact, this game, I wasn't expecting this going into this review or even going into the game itself, but this game's more like a game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta or Ninja Gaiden, and less of an RPG. Like, this is a full-on, fast action game. And it actually kind of reminds me of something like Nier, but even Nier had like a lot more, I think, RPG elements than this game actually does. But you do have some customization with your character, like you can level up your weapons and stuff like that. Again, very similar to something like Ninja Gaiden or Ninja Gaiden 2. That's where I actually found that this game actually came in combat, which, again, segueing to even though I was not really liking the story in this game, one of the things I loved about this game was the combat. The combat in this game was super satisfying. It was, I'm just going to throw it out there right now. Out of all the games I've played in 2020, this is probably the most fun I've had playing a game combat-wise out of any other game I played this year. And that might change, when something like Bayonetta comes around, because I love fast action games. Like, I love Ninja Gaiden, I love Bayonetta, I love Devil May Cry, I love Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Like, I love games that play like that. So having that, having an RPG-ish game play like that is like a dream come true for someone like me. So I had so much fun with the combat in this game. Yes, in the earlier levels, like, you face a lot of the same enemies, so you don't really have a lot of enemy variety throughout the earlier levels. And plus, you don't have a lot of weapons at that time either, so you don't have, or spells, so you don't have a lot of, varying degrees of combat. But as you progress through the game, as you unlock more skill, it's an ability for Valkyrie. You also get just more and more complex sets of enemies that come at you. You also, as you level up each weapon, because you can pay, gems into the weapons themselves to upgrade them, you'll then learn new combos that you can do with the weapons. Again, very similar to leveling up weapons in Ninja Gaiden or Devil May Cry. It just felt very, very similar to those games. And I just had a blast with the combat itself. So it's very combo heavy. You're zipping around the battlefield because you have this tether that you can throw at different enemies to then launch yourself towards them. So and I found, instead of running between different enemies around these giant kind of fight areas, I'm just zipping from enemy to enemy, just taking them down with different combos, exploiting their elemental weaknesses, and then summoning the correct Aranjar that kind of coincides with that weakness as well to then stun the enemies. Like, oh man, the combat was so deep and so engrossing in this game, and it's the thing that really kept me from putting this game down, if I'm being perfectly honest. Because again, the story itself, if I wasn't reviewing the game and the story and the combat wasn't good, I would have probably put this game down and just never gone back to it halfway through it. But because the combat was there, man, it was so fun to play. Like, I just could not stop. In fact, it made me want to go back. It was the thing that made me really want to go back and do the side quests and get the S ranking on each level, because it was just so much fun to play that I just really enjoy that element of it. So the game itself, isn't too difficult or anything like that, though. It is actually definitely easier than a lot of the games I've actually compared it to, which is kind of nice. So if you want to get into that style of game, but you find, a game like Bayonetta might be a little too difficult for you, this actually might be a good place to start. Because again, I think even if you, like the normal difficulty, I think is quite approachable for most players. And then if you throw it down to the easy difficulty, like I think you're going to have like an easy way of getting into this style of game. So yeah, from that perspective, I love the way this game plays. And it's just a shame that a lot of the other elements just really couldn't keep up with that, because the other kind of lacking element to this game as well is kind of the visual design. I like the cell shading with the characters themselves in it, and they felt, the character models themselves felt very much in line with the rest of the series. So it definitely felt like a Valkyrie profile game, and it feels like it's from that series. But the environments themselves are just not very interesting to look at, but it does make sense when you consider the story, because the story is kind of about, hey, the world's kind of ended and you're going around, purifying the undead souls that have appeared because, the world's kind of ended. So it makes sense for you to be running around these empty environments and these, worn down castles, or this coastal town that looks like it's been ravaged by like a tidal wave or something like that. Like it makes sense story-wise as to why the environments would be kind of barren. But at the same time, like, I don't know, I just wish there was a little more color to it, or I just wish there was, a little bit more to the environments themselves, or I just think they would have looked nicer. But again, it still kind of fits in the visual design of this universe, so I'm not going to kind of rag on, the visual design all that much. And also, again, it runs pretty much at 60 frames per second throughout the entire experience on PlayStation 5. You don't really have any visual adjustments, so you don't really have like a quality mode or anything like that you can go into, or likewise, you don't have a performance mode to really lock the frame rate, because sometimes when the screen, gets, super hectic, a lot of times it can slow down the frame rate, quite heavily, actually. So there is that element that you have to contend with a little bit. But all in all, I did, for the most part, like, even though I can forgive a little bit of the visual elements to it. But otherwise, for the most part, with this game, just thinking about it in an overall sense, I honestly really had a great time playing it. But the disappointment of the story, considering the franchise that it's trying to fit in, really kind of lowered it on my overall standings for me. But again, actually, I think if this wasn't a Valkyrie profile game, if it wasn't in this, long beloved series, if it was just a new IP, I think we'd probably be looking at this game in a completely different light, because it's one of those things where I play a game like Ninja Gaiden or Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and the stories themselves in those games aren't good either. Like they're just, okay at best, if not poor. But I still, like, those are some of my favorite games of all time, because the combat really sold it for me in the same way that this game kind of does. So I think, like, if it didn't have this baggage that it was tied to with, being a Valkyrie profile game, then honestly, I think it would probably be much higher on my scale for this. This was just a new IP, because I really think there's something here with the combat and the way that it feels to play this game. I really think there's a great game in here that's just bogged down with a lot of elements that are just disappointing. So overall, do I recommend you check out Valkyrie Profile? I think if you don't really care about story in games and you like really fun combat games, I think you're going to really dig this game. I did. Like, you can definitely tell from the excitement in my voice just talking about it. Like, I really, really, really enjoyed playing this game. And if the gameplay is kind of king for you, the dear viewer or listener, then definitely go out and pick this game up. I actually think it's quite worth it and a lot of fun to play. However, if you're looking for something that, is it's a great, sequel to Valkyrie Profile, or with something that tells like a great RPG story, you're just not going to find that here. It's not, what this game's all about, unfortunately, which I know I'm just so disheartened when I say that, but it's true. Unfortunately, I'm sad to report that that's the case. But I do think that, even if you don't pick this game up right away, even if it pops up on PlayStation Plus at some point, or goes on sale, or if you just try the demo and really enjoy it, like, I do think, there's enough good things here that it's a game that should be on your radar, regardless of the disappointing things I talked about in this review. But anyways, I would love to know what you think about Valkyrie Elysium. Are you playing it? Did you play the demo? And do you have any questions for me about the full game? Let me know in the comments below. I will answer any questions that you might have about the game. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, on YouTube at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming right here, and on podcast services around the globe. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Well, this has been our review of Valkyrie Elysium. I'm Ryan Turford. and I'm out.